So, as we're talking about the purpose for the California Math Framework, what was the ultimate purpose around the new California Math Framework?
Well, great question. Just happen to have a few things to say. Again, I don't really need notes. I hopefully don't need notes. It's only 900 pages, and I'm sorry, you all. We did the best we could with initially wanting it to be something fairly small. It expanded out because of all the great public comments we got from throughout the state. Thanks to many of you all for encouraging that. The overall vision that we started with was looking at the 2013 framework that came out right around the time of the 2013 standards were released, or the revision that came out then. And thinking about what guidance would be most helpful to folks in the state. And it seemed like emphasizing more on a few key things like learning progressions would be really helpful. That there was a lot of unfinished learning that was happening when students got to certain grade levels, and that teacher understanding how things got taught earlier and then where it would lead to would be really helpful for folks. We also sort of came up with the notion of sort of consolidating down and thinking about a little bit, we can do more with less in terms of really focusing on key ideas at various grade levels, that it felt like the grade level standards got away from that a little bit. The idea that we teach a standard a day, which is what many teachers were doing. I taught high school, that's kind of the way it worked. You literally would write the standard on the board, and that they were never really designed to be taught like that. But kind of like Peter was alluding to this morning, there wasn't a lot of guidance for just how to teach, standards in general. So the idea is that we would have some key components, which we put in chapter 2 about some different structures for how teachers could teach. That would also result in learning about the standards and learning of the standards without focusing explicitly on one standard per day, because that was disconnected for students. So that was the other thing I'll just add, is that active investigation was a key part of that. Having students being active in the classroom every day was really important, which was new, I have to say, not new for the framework, but for some folks where we were very used to, and I count myself in that boat too, from my teacher training back when I was an undergrad, very much in a passive. We expected students just to be able to sit there and learn, and that was really what obviously we know doesn't work from the research, which we also of course cited too. I think I've talked plenty about some of that vision and stuff. And make it actionable, that was just the last thing. Make it actionable. That was something that we felt strongly about, was that the guidance needed to be clear and as much as possible that folks could understand and sink their teeth into quickly, because time is of the essence.
And the next one is for Hilda, actually, it's kind of a follow-up. Like, why should educators, leaders, communities embrace this new approach? You're president-elect for CNC, so that's why I'm bringing this to you. Why should we embrace it?
Okay, easy question. It's back to student-centered classrooms. It's back to student thinking, student ownership, right? It's looking at students' assets. What a shift, what a change. But it's not a new idea. So the fact that the framework has now called it out so beautifully, and I love that it's the spirit of the framework, right? That it's more emphasis on students and families and communities and culture. It's what's missing. It's what we need. And so I just love that the framework is done such a good job at elevating that, I guess, because I think it's what we need. And I think once we shift that mindset, we're going to see a huge difference in how students interact with math and how they believe in themselves as mathematicians. So I hope that is what you were looking for.
And actually, Brian, I do want to come back to you because both of you spoke very optimistically about this California Math Framework. Brian, I'm curious what you've heard, some of the misconceptions around the California Math Framework, and share out maybe what you've heard and some of the response to that.
Sure, yeah, I have heard a few. And I think one confusion that comes up is that, right, the standards are we shifting standards? And of course, no, we're not. Still Common Core, California's a Common Core line state, same standards. So the actual mathematics that we're teaching at the grade levels is still the same. It's more of the how we're teaching it, how we're engaging students. Some things that came in later iterations were things like the 3 dimensions. And one of those is about asset-based instruction, leveraging what students can do rather than thinking about what they can't do. And I think that for a lot of folks is ambitious. The framework itself is just guidance, it's not policy. The policy is we have to teach standards, that's the policy. But beyond that, how we're teaching it is really up to us to decide. So we wanted it purposefully to be aspirational. These are things to aspire to, not just sort of minimum, just trying to achieve the bare minimum. And so because of that, I think we try to put as much guidance in there about things like leveraging student assets in the classroom. And again, for a lot of us now, it's leveraging our own teacher assets. What kind of things can we do and share? And that's where broadly the framework is meant to be a resource for us and point to some of those things that we know works and we've heard about, and we can find out more information there and start conversations maybe in our districts or with our colleague or with our administrator about making change, effective change in math instruction, because it has been a difficult problem, not just for California, across the nation, across the world, of course. But I think there's a lot of gains to be made, so we, as much as possible, we try to include some of that hopeful language in there as well.
No, I think that's beautiful. It's a great segue to start talking about, and Kat, I'm going to come to you a little bit, about the practice and shifting that the instructional shift that's happening in the classroom. You're talking about like assets for students and also assets for teachers leveraging both. So Kat, as a classroom teacher, like what's your understanding of the California Math Framework and like what shifts are going to be able to happen in your classroom or in your building?
I think everyone in this room is really well versed in like what's kind of happening in California in terms of the direction we're moving math instruction. I look around at my own school and we don't all know what's happening with the framework and things like that. And I would honestly even, Rob, push this back over to, Monica and I have been talking about that. Like, I am kind of looking towards our leadership to say how, like, trickle-down economics might not be the thing, but like, I think this needs to trickle down in some sort of way so that teachers aren't seeing this as another thing put on their plate, but as a shift in what we're already doing to make it effective. All of us are feeling that grind and are feeling that exhaustion of like, especially I feel like kind of in the post-COVID world of like getting our students where we know we want to see them and having that, in this AI world too, like that creative and innovative thought processes. And I think we need to get it, like, I think superintendents are gonna have to make some really important informed decisions to get it down to the teacher level so that it doesn't feel like a new implementation of starting over.
Well, and
I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh yeah, and go ahead and hand it to Monica because that's actually a perfect segue again. It's almost like, what's happening. But like teachers, like we've heard that, like teachers are saying like this is just another thing, like it's another thing on our plate, and it feels very, it's like it's heavy, right? So like Monica, as a district leader, like how can you as a superintendent level, and if there are other superintendents in the room, like what's the messaging? Like, how can we support our teachers to make sure that they know it's not just another thing and that it's just a shift in like what we're already kind of doing?
So I think on my part, the first thing I think of is there's a lot of healing that needs to happen. The 2013 rollout of the standards, the framework, and then what curriculum do we use was, in my opinion, poorly done in the sense of the training was not there. We were shifting from using one set of standards to another set of standards to a different way of teaching. And so we wanted to automatically go to a curriculum. And so with the lack of professional development, what happened is a lot of us started using supplemental material. So then there was no building capacity of our teachers, of our leaders. And what we do best, I'm an elementary superintendent, is we do language arts the best. So the focus became that, and math kind of stayed on the side. So now at the district level is how do we bring that healing of this is not a different way of doing math, but the fair way, the equitable way for our students to become those leaders in the future. They really need to become critical thinkers. But I think this morning we talked about state, but it's a state of mind for the adults first, so that we can then build that capacity so we become that facilitator. I was struggling today. There was a lot of productive struggle. Not just struggle, but the productive struggle was because the facilitators in the room knew what to lead and they were confident. So if we can get our administrators and our teachers at that level of facilitation, then our students will be in good hands.
Well, and that's a really good point. So Kat alluded to like the trickle down effect, but so how important is it, Monica, to have our instructional leaders, like the building leaders? Because right now, like we're talking to a superintendent, we talk to a teacher right next to you, like how important is it to have instructional leaders in between the superintendents to the teachers? And what can we do to support them?
That's the key. The building leader is the key. The district level, we can say, do this, this is the training you're gonna get. Teachers will get the professional development, but if the leader does not monitor, implement, coach, look and seek for support, then we're gonna be back in 2013.
And Kat, coming back to you, like from a teacher standpoint, how important is it to not just have the mindset where you're open to professional learning, but also what kind of professional learning do you think like teachers could get or should get to help shift mindsets? Remember,
I
Kat,
think
what I
maybe
said.
enough for that question. Shoot, Rob. I don't know that we all know yet. I mean, I think Peter and Kathy might be sitting in this room with like more insight to that as they've seen teachers make those shifts. You know, we all know in our schools where the resistance will come from, what it will look like. I think like bringing up the point of the building leaders, having a deep understanding of what we're being asked to do in the classrooms and what that looks like, its importance, and their thorough understanding. As much as teachers could have as much training as possible and all the good things, teachers, you know, they're there to show up for the kids and make this work, and they want to try new practices to make those shifts. But if the people in charge of our buildings, like you said, aren't facilitating that and supporting that, because these kind of shifts, if you are looking at a classroom that teaches a little more, like, shall we say, like traditional math structures, this is, as much as it's not new, as Hilda said, it is a big shift. Like, let's be honest. And if you have been teaching a traditional model, there's going to be a lot of time and dedication that needs to be put forward. And if teachers aren't given that support during their school days with their students and given the time to try it, come back, learn more, and try it again, there's an entire process that would make this effective, but we have to fund it, we have to give it the time, and we have to have leadership that supports it.
Hey, listen, Kat, you were mad at me about the question, but they just laughed at me. I actually want to go to Hilda real quick. Sorry, Brian. I want to go to Hilda real quick because as Hilda, as somebody who with CMC, you're with the Professional Learning Committee, you oversee that. So what can a state organization like CMC do to support the teachers, support the superintendents, and also support the instructional leaders that are leading these buildings? Like, how are you able to help with this? And this is a big question as well, but to help with these shifts.
So I want to put on like different hats right now because I work at the county office. I also taught at the university. We serve as teachers, and then we have our role for CMC. Over the last, I've been doing this for 30 years, right? So I feel like we have to start with individuals, adults, children, families, parents, and like redefine what math is and who is allowed to be a mathematician. And I really believe when it comes to professional learning, this has to be key. It has to be part of it because there's so much anxiety and trauma around mathematics, and we know this. This is not new knowledge. You can say, I don't like to do math, or I don't know how to do math, and everyone's like, me neither, girl, give me a high five. But as soon as I say I can't read, you're gonna talk behind my back as soon as I walk away. So part of that is I really feel like what we can do is begin to, we hear it often, like we're all math people, and I just feel like we can't say that enough. We just can't say that enough. And until we believe that, and until we believe that math is part of our human existence, a shift is hard. You know, it's hard because we need professional learning to learn and build capacity, but we also need to follow up. And that follow up comes in coaching. I love what I'm hearing about like administrators and leaders and how important it is for them to also have understanding about mathematics and the belief that we need, that we can all be mathematicians. So I could go on about this topic forever, but I feel like I want to land there, just about our own individual mindsets around mathematics.
Well, and to follow up real quick with you, Hoda, I know, Brian, I'm gonna get you, I'm sorry. But coming back to you real quick, Hoda, about how does that look for our multilingual learners?
Oh, again, we could talk about this for days. I
Let's summarize.
love this topic because both my parents are from Mexico, right? So my first language is Spanish. And growing up, I grew up in very white spaces. School, church. I grew up on a rancho, you guys, no neighbors whatsoever. And so like, culture for me is interesting because I felt like when I became a bilingual aide, I was 20 years old. And I feel like I learned more about my culture at 20 years old than I ever had. And growing up, we only went to Mexico but a couple times. And my brother would get mad, en español, which means in Spanish. But I'd been growing up in very like English schools, right, English spaces. And then at 20, I'm in a bilingual aide and I'm learning my Spanish, I felt like again. And so when I became a teacher, high English learner population. And I can't stress how much math my students had. Now, I'm fortunate that I speak Spanish, so I could teach in Spanish and I could interact with them in Spanish. But right now, living in California, we know that language is something that's beautiful, so diverse, it's so beautiful. And so I want nothing more than our multilingual students to come into a classroom and feel like they're valued, feel like they're brilliant. And so I think right now it's so important as we have a new framework that highlights multilingual learners. We have new textbooks coming out that are going to give a lot of language supports. It's very personal to me, sorry everybody. It's very personal to me, but multilingualism is beautiful. And so we have to capitalize on that. And see the asset and see the brilliance and bring in our families and our communities as well. So I could talk about this forever. But yes, very important right now, very important.
And Brian, so I told you to come back. So based on like everything that's been said, and you lead professional learnings, and you also, were a part of this, like what's the vision? Like how can we, what do you think is the best way to support teachers and administrators, even state organizations and everybody?
Sure, yeah, so in chapter 10 of the framework, we mentioned a couple specific professional learning mechanisms. Coaching is one, that for some teachers working one-on-one with a knowledgeable other is just invaluable. It's again, if we make it a little bit akin to like with students, so, we know tutoring one-on-one can be highly effective. I mean, walking one-on-one with somebody, therapy, things like that, is really helpful for a lot of folks to shift their mindset from where they're at to do something a little bit farther. I appreciate what was said, what Monica said before, and what Kat said too. I mean, too much change too quickly also makes people recoil, and that's not what we want. We want to take somebody from where they're at, just like our students, and move them a little bit further. In order to do that, we have to understand where they're at. And so I think that's why we know, research-wise, we know instructional coaching, is highly effective. It's one of the things we promoted in the framework. Beyond that, there's another mechanism, and that's lesson study, which is near and dear to my heart because it's one that math project, statewide math project in CanMe really has found a lot of good support for, is where teams of teachers work together and design a lesson and do that work outside of the classroom and then come into the classroom and see it play out and go back out and talk about it and so on and so forth. But I think, again, as we all know, it's not only our students' relationship to math, it's our relationship to math. I see the framework broadly as humanizing math. That's what we want to be doing, is humanizing this to students, this very difficult, strange, esoteric subject, mathematics, which is actually one of the most humanistic entities of all. I mean, I talk about with my pre-service students a lot about the concept of the number 2. Where does 2 live? There's only one place that it lives, really. I mean, we could write a numeral 2, and we can have 2, and we can hold up, these are just representations. The idea of 2 really only lives in the human mind. And so, math in itself is very humanistic. And so we think about things like language and incorporating that, and incorporating different students' backgrounds and their diversities into the classroom. It's really just humanizing something that already is, by its nature, very human. I love the book, and we do quote it a little bit by Francis Sue, Math is for Human Flourishing, which is a wonderful book about correspondence that he has with a prison inmate, Chris Jackson. And it's just a lovely read if you all want to check that out sometime. But it talks about that, like, why would somebody in prison want to be studying these freaking calculus books if not for the fact that his soul was kind of crying out for that? That it was depriving, he felt deprived of a way to flourish because it was completing him in a way. And so, anyway, it's a lovely treatment, but again, that spirit of sort of humanity, we really want to be in, I feel like, in math. Not just the humanities, it's in math as well. So anyway, in terms of the professional learning, though, the lesson study and coaching are what we hopefully can help teachers to do to also humanize the math.
Thank you. Now we're going to shift a little bit into systems. Okay, I'm going to come back to Monica. As a district-wide leader, think about some of the decisions that you made when you're successfully supporting an instructional change on this scale. What are some of the key moves that we should think about and support, from a system standpoint?
So building awareness is the first step, at least for our district. Making sure that our labor partners are aware of the shifts, our parents, because that's who's going to either let it flow or they're going to stop it because it gets hard, right? So that communication is key. The understanding, the slow practice, professional development. We know that list that it has been waiting for is right around the corner. Labor partners keep asking, where's the list? Well, we're still waiting. November, hopefully we have a list. But also helping them understand that we're not going into an adoption right away. We want to make sure they understand what we're adopting. We want to make sure we build their capacity so when they pilot something, then it works for the population of students that we have. So really having them involved in that communication from the beginning is key.
And Kat, from a teacher perspective, what do you hope you see with the system in the building or school? And especially as Monica talked about communication, what does that look like for you as a teacher?
Yeah, obviously I'm involved in this realm a little bit to even be in this chair. So for me, it's oh yeah, there's the new California math framework, but I think even the knowledge, and I think all of you sitting in this room are informed of that. But if you are working at the ground level in a school, do all your colleagues know that? That I would start there. Do people even know what's happening in California in terms of math? Is that on people's radar? Because we all have a lot of busy things that we're doing and a lot of things on our radar. Let's make sure that actual fact that there is a new framework and it is shifting some of the ideas that are not new, but are shifting maybe for people who don't know that there's a new framework. I would start there. My district is, I'm currently piloting. We have been in this process since January of last year. I have a lot of thoughts and feedback about how my district did it. It was super intentional. Our first couple of months was just around building understandings of the framework. We didn't talk about curriculum, we didn't talk about students, we just built our understanding of the framework first. And I think that foundation helped us in terms of the curriculum. We started with 25 curriculums, and that helped us really quickly kind of get to our top 3, and now we're in our second pilot of the 3, and that's like an entire happy hour dinner conversation about that process. But I would definitely, anyone who's in charge of that process, get your teachers started in the framework first, because that has always been, anytime we get into like, will teachers do that though? Like, will teachers do that? Like, I don't know. We go like, wait, or get back. Like, what are our green flags and our red flags from the framework? And let's like, get it back in that space.
Hilda, so the many hats you wear and that you've worn over your time, like how do we make sustained, meaningful instructional change from a system standpoint?
I think I heard it already, but I do feel that it involves everyone. And they need to be at the table from the beginning. Parents and family and communities don't need to be an afterthought. Even those that are against you don't need to be an afterthought. So I think that the more we can have this collective understanding of what's good for our students and for our future and for civic career and college, I don't think that anybody will deny like that this is what we want. Kids to be thinkers, reasoners, sense makers, problem solvers. I've had many conversations with different educational partners, and let me tell you, we all have the same goal. It's just trying to take what we've always believed math instruction to look like and change it to something different that's actually going to prepare our students. And they're not the same kids from 20, 10, or even 5 years ago. So I think it's collective understanding from the get-go would really be helpful in how we move forward.
And I think one of the toughest questions, and honestly, anybody who wants to answer this can answer this question, one of the toughest questions that we always ask, and I don't think there's a true answer for this.
Yeah, who's it going to?
It's probably, I don't know who's going to say it. How do we get parents to come? How do we get them to come into the buildings? Like, how do we meet them where they are? Like, how do I pass it to Monica? She passed it to somebody else. But like, so that's what, I don't think there's a real 100% answer here. But what are some things that you've done that's worked?
It's a team effort. It's all hands on deck. So in our district, we have 12 elementary schools. Every elementary school has a community school coordinator. Every elementary school has a community school room. So beginning that in small settings for our parents, because I said at the beginning, I'm sitting here in a room of educators and I haven't been in the classroom in a long time. I need a good facilitator so I can learn a good math strategy. I was having a hard time. I was having productive struggle. And even sitting here now, we were just sharing, we're strong in the reading area. We have to get strong in math and really promoting what our students need to learn. So having intimate settings for our parents and then going into a larger setting. I think that's important because if we're intimidated with some way of doing math, that maybe we didn't learn how to do math that way, and now we have to rewire everything, it feels like, then how do we make sure that they feel safe and are able to take those risks? Again, going to that state of mind.
Brian, what were some of the ideas that maybe you have for engaging communities?
For engaging.
Yeah. Like, and how can we get them, like what's worked or what have you seen work?
Well, I think one thing that came up, I know, we had a meeting earlier this week, MSCS, and sort of family engagement was one of the key themes to that, or components to what one of the keynotes was about. And I think, oftentimes people fear what they don't know. And so many times I think, things like having like a family, math night, STEAM night, things like that have been useful to helping build some sense of community around not just the classroom, but the classroom is a community, but also that there's a larger community that the teacher and the students sort of plug into. And I think that's one of the things that we probably could have encouraged more, to be honest, in the framework. But it's one of those things that, again, we can't just expect will happen. We actually have to be intentional and make it happen. If you had 0 events like that this year, how about 1 next year? You know, the idea of if we can focus and do a little bit of what has been shared, I think, in terms of oftentimes that again, the family engagement piece, it seems like, is something where there are many times, many opportunities of helping teachers and parents grow in their understanding of what this is about. One thing will point out in particular is, and again, circling back to lesson study, is having a public research lesson that can be on site in the classroom. Sometimes some people do it in a gymnasium, and it's an event. And having folks come and watch a classroom really happen, and being like, wow, this is almost like an athletic event that we're watching here, but here the kids come in and we're high-fiving them, coming in the room, celebrating a math lesson in the same way that we would celebrate a sports event, is an amazing feeling for kids that might not excel in sports, might not feel that realm of like success in places outside of the classroom. So again, the more ways that we can, I feel like, incorporate those feelings into the classroom, the better. But those are a couple of things that sort of come to my mind.
Thank you. All right, so that concludes this portion. Oh, go ahead.
Can I just say one thing?
Oh, you can say as many as you want.
No, just really quick. So I was part of this Cal MSCS group, and I have a wonderful resource that has links to, there's so many resources out there for family engagement. So I don't know who I need to give it to, but once I give that to you, you guys, can we give that to them? It'll be, who am I talking to? Better not, maybe? Somebody? Okay.
All those people.
It'll just be resources for family engagement, and I'll just add one thing, is if we can see our families as experts. As experts. My father is my math hero. That's my dad. He only had a 6th grade education, but he is our math hero. All of us became mathematicians because of him. So I just want to put that out there. See them as the experts that they are.
Well, that's a beautiful thing. Yeah. Now you can clap for me. Good. Okay, so this next portion of this is where we get the audience involved, okay? So they prepared something, because I let them know in advance. We asked the question, what are the top 3 most important qualities of a new math curriculum resource aligned with California Math Framework? And we forced them to rank them in order of importance, 1, 2, and 3. What I want all of you to do is listen to their statement with their argument. And you are going to decide what your top 1 is. If you notice around the room, and you probably even noticed it when you did the work with Peter and Albert, the notes above the white books are what their 1, 2s, and 3s are. Okay, you get to pick what your number 1 is. Everybody understand that? Once they get done, I'm going to say, here's where each of the options are. You go. And then you're going to be with like-minded folks. You're going to craft an argument why you believe it's the number 1. And then these 4 are going to come around and try to debate you and convince you to go other places. So it's going to be a fun little debate here, okay? So we're going to start with, who has the mic first? Monica. She's going to say her top 3 most important qualities in order. In order.
Okay, so clarity and high leverage thinking. I think a student needs to know what they're learning, why they're learning it, and how they'll know they learned it, and make sure they know how to express it. So that's my number 1 thing. Math talk in academic language. Again, I serve a district with 65% multilingual learners, so we have to make sure that that language is developed. And then the third one is rich tasks that promote that productive struggle. So just like science, beginning from that phenomena, but through math.
And Kat?
Okay, so I'm gonna start for my third one. I know I'll start for my first. Okay, my first one is student experience. Because this is, we're talking about a math curriculum. And I was sitting here thinking about the ones we're piloting, and I'm like, I just keep going back to what are the kids doing? What are the kids doing? What are they hearing? What are they touching? What are they seeing? Like, what are they doing to prove they understand something? Like that, I just keep going back to like, what are the kids doing? And as I know Peter started our whole day about what the choices we make as teachers and the power in that, but in a curriculum, I feel like I'm looking for what the student experience is. What does it feel like to sit in this curriculum day in and day out? Or stand in this curriculum day in and day out? My second was math sequence and discovery. This was a point that we actually eliminated about 15 curriculums because of this one idea of in what order and in what way are students discovering rules and generalizations about math. We would see the standard algorithm introduced in second grade and it hurt our souls and you were immediately off the table if that was happening. It was kind of like our take on it. Sorry, you don't agree? So like the sequence and discovery was my second one. And then my third one was entry points for all. I work in Shavi was in my classroom yesterday, and I have kids who this is their first year of formal schooling, and I'm a second grade teacher. So how do we get every kid to the table with, as Hilda said, everyone's bringing something, everyone has their assets, how are we getting that voice in the room? And if it is all written, or it is all verbal, or it is all multiple choice, in what ways are you excluding certain learners? And how do you make sure every learner gets to fit into this model? So that would be my third.
Okay, thanks. Let's see. My first one is rich tasks and activities that merit curiosity. Not all tasks merit curiosity. Let's make sure we've got those first and foremost in my mind. And exploration and they're worthy of conversations, worthy of talking about. And again, we need tasks, like teachers constantly come up to me and ask for tasks like that. And so we need that to be the case. Second is explicit connections to big ideas, so that students don't get to the end of the year and they're like, I know how to do a lot of disconnected procedures, but I don't know what it all means. I really don't know addition really any better, the broad concept of it, than knowing how to do a bunch of addition procedures. And then third is connection between multiple representations. I think it's a huge emphasis. We should be putting much more on things like tape diagrams, to be frank about it. Tables, number charts, lines, arrays, area models, things like that, making math highly visual. Kathy is nodding. It's probably Joe's influence, too, and Kathy on me as well, that visual reasoning is such a huge element of how we understand and can communicate about math meaningfully. So maybe that should have been first on mine. I put it third. Sorry.
Okay, this was really hard, so let's just put that out there, okay? Very hard to do. I landed on, I started to think, if I'm gonna look at a curriculum, like, it needs to look different than what we have, I started to think, and so my number one was conceptual understanding. I thought it was critical that if I'm looking at some curriculum, I need it to have conceptual understanding as the heart, without it being an extra lab somewhere, right, where kids can explore, investigate, and they can see these multiple representations. So I put that as first, because it also, as the teacher, and working with teachers for many years now, they always say, like, I don't understand the math, or the math is like hard for me to understand. So I feel like they lean on the text a lot to teach them some of the math. So if we can put that as part of the lesson, the conceptual understanding, our educators, our teachers, or even our administrators will be able to understand the math in a different way that they've ever had before. They'll be able to explain and answer questions. And so I feel like conceptual understanding would be number one for me. That'd be key. The second thing is language supports and language routines. And I know that this is part of the ask for publishers, but thinking about how if all of a sudden language is such a big part of math and how I interact with mathematics, it's going to serve everyone. You saw it today, all of us around this room. We just saw it today. Language, the way we communicate, the way we are able to collaborate. Math is social. right? It's a social event. So not only, especially for our multilingual learners, but for everyone. And then my third one was teacher guidance. Like no matter what, if I'm getting that textbook, I'm the teacher, I need that to be helpful for me. I need it to help guide me. What should it look like? What questions might I need to ask? And so that I think is critical, and it includes the progressions, the scope and sequence. But more importantly, it's just helping me make some decisions and some teacher moves that will benefit all my students. Those are my three.
Awesome. All right, just so that way you know where everything is. I'm gonna, like, as I read it at the top, just, if that's your number one, just make a note that's where you're headed. Yes, sir.
So what if your number one wasn't one that they mentioned?
Ooh. If your number one's not one they mentioned, come by the cookies. Right here. Okay? All right. So the first one here, clarity and high leverage thinking. Clarity, high leverage thinking. Connections between multiple representations with strong emphasis on visual goals. Right here. Explicit connections to grade level big ideas. Entry points for all. Math, sequence, and discovery. Student experience.
Those three were mine, right there. Those are my three.
And she's the voice of all teachers in California. Teacher guidance / notes. Math talk and academic language development. Language supports routines. These two can kind of go together maybe. Rich tasks that promote productive struggle, curiosity, exploration, and conversation, right here. Conceptual understanding and learning, right here. Is that it? Did I miss one? Okay.
They overlap.
What two?
They overlap over there.
These two?
Yeah.
If they overlap, they're side by side, then you guys are together. And you join forces and yell at Cat. Okay, everybody understand what we're doing? You are to go with like-minded folks. As soon as I say go, you're going to have 2 minutes to craft your argument. And then these 4 are going to come around and try to convince you to go elsewhere. Go.